Hello everybody and welcome to this month's Specifier practice group call, and actually I guess the last practice group call for specifiers in 2014. So David and Lewis, over to you.
Well, thank you, Matt. This is Dave, and today I'm coming to you from New York City. It's a gorgeous day here, and hopefully being out on the road. I've given the steering wheel over to Lewis today, so he's actually going to be recording everything that's going on and all of your comments. And hopefully we get lots from you. I hope that some of you can join in the audio to be able to explain your positions.
Actually, I'm coming to you from downtown Nashville, and it's kind of gray, gloomy, and day with some off and on showers, unlike our normal salubrious and sunny weather. But we've already had, David, several people when they registered sent in some comments, and I've actually pre-populated some portions of the diagram with some of those ideas, and so we want to thank Karen Wood and some of the Elias and some of the other people who made those comments, because ultimately this is really your show, and David and I, we have some ideas, but we can learn from you, and we're out to try to do what best helps your needs and respond to your comments and your questions, and help and be facilitators for sharing information between our listeners. So with that in mind, this is kind of an experiment that we haven't done this before, is that we're going to have this open discussion and try to get folks to think about and express some ideas about what are the things that a specifier has to do that are not related to just the activity of writing spec sections, and how do we and maybe the unwritten part of a job description, or they might be tasks that are shared with someone else on the project team. And so David, back to you. Get us started.
And Lewis, since this is an experiment, why is it that it should be no surprise that I put you in charge, right? Things go wrong today, it'll be your fault. Okay.
Oh, I thought it was because I have more of a forward-looking attitude.
Ah, okay.
And more flexible. One of the great life lessons I learned was in basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia, with Sergeant Calvin Johnson back in the mid-60s, who used to say to us 3 or 4 times a day, "Remain flexible, men. Remain flexible."
Okay. So
that's not a bad motto for specifiers.
I think it's standard operating procedure, actually. So anyhow, we did want to reach out to all of you folks today, and hopefully we do have you contributing new information to this chart that Lewis and I started. And this was really a result of our own discussion and some of the things that Lewis and I are actually dealing with on a daily basis. So we're looking at, as you see, the specifier certainly in the center of the universe, and everything revolving around the specifier. That should be just perfectly understood, I'm sure. And I'm sure many of you will agree.
When I walk through the drafting studios, I always say, draw it the way I write it, guys and gals. Draw it the way I write it.
Okay. So, Lewis, I don't know if maybe you want to just take us around and show some of the comments and see if we have anyone that wants to start in any one particular place. We're not structured for today, and what I'd like to let you know is that we do not have to talk about each one of these subjects. And if you want to focus on any one particular subject, that will be just fine. And because this, as Lewis said, this is your show today, let you help contribute some of these ideas as to where you believe, what what really is the role of a specifier.
One of the things that I'm dealing with at my present office is that we haven't clearly identified the job description for being in charge of specifications. I maintain our spec masters, but the individual project professionals, architects and engineers and interior designers, edit their own specs. But the what's at issue is who assembles all of that stuff, puts it together. And so I've written an internal white paper describing that role, and I will modify it to make it more generic and not specific to my firm, and make that available at the end of the presentation. But who knows, you guys may give us some ideas that I may need to go back and change my documents. So here are a couple of ideas that came in with, as I mentioned earlier, some folks who had some made some comments when they registered to attend today on planning. And I think these are pretty self-explanatory. The owner performance requirements would also involve sustainability goals and several kinds of things. And of course, some owners have special national purchasing agreements with certain firms, and of course there's always scheduling. I see we have a question. What company am I with? I'm with Gresham Smith and Partners, a multi-office, multidiscipline firm. Our home office is here in Nashville, but we have 16 offices in the States and 1 office in Shanghai, China.
Okay. And Louis, this doesn't have anything to do with planning, but Jerry Pazzo says that we should be checking locally with a CSI or high-profile rep of the product that is being specified. So is that, we have one element under connecting, perhaps?
Yeah, let's go to connecting on that one. And obviously, a specifier's best friend should be a fellow CSI member who's a product rep, because none of us know enough to write every single architectural section, and the industry is changing even if we did know a lot. So we need to know who to turn to, and not only who to turn to for our own needs, but when my PA needs help with detailing a curtain wall, who should I tell him to call?
Well, and who do you call? Because on the East Coast, one of the things that I rely on is the CSI member directory. Because when I'm working on a project and it happens to be 6 o'clock, you know where I'm calling to get help? I'm looking for product reps in Hawaii.
That's an interesting approach. That hadn't occurred to me, but that's a great idea.
Well, 6-hour time difference, I get a real bargain. And you know what? Those folks are perfectly willing to help. You tell them that you're you're a CSI member, and it opens the door.
And that works both ways. I used to have back in the 80s, shortly after I joined CSI, I had my receptionist all primed that if somebody came in trying to make a cold call, just walked in off the street and asked to speak to the specifier, I had my secretary ask him or her, "Are you a member of CSI?" If I had the time, I'd talk to them either way, but I tried to let them know that was a preference. That membership. But let's address Jerry's question a little bit. Online manufacturer specs are a good place to start, but often we need assistance in knowing what options. If you go to, for example, the Henry Company makes a bewildering array of air barriers. Which one do I need? when do I use one and when do I use the other? And so that's why a personal contact really should be indispensable, not only for the specifier but for everybody on the project team.
Okay, I'll ask you that.
And all the CCPRs can stick up your hands and compliment me on that remark.
Very good. And I'll ask you to add one here, just one of my thoughts.
Okay.
Because as a specifier too, I'm looking to help connect our clients with other folks. Just recently connected an architect with especially an EA firm that's in the same business area, and also connecting client firms directly with product reps that I know can help them select the products that they're trying to find. So we had let's see, a comment from Elias Saltz says it's worth pointing out the specifier deals with specs for a project for a couple of weeks, but the contractor has to live with them for the duration of the project. Better specs facilitate communication to reduce friction between stakeholders.
Oh, I agree with that completely. As a matter of fact, I actually view myself, I think there's a spiritual component to writing specifications, and I view myself as a peacemaker. Some years ago I was looking for a definition of peace that was not just a negative definition, absence of conflict, and realized that it has to do with order and getting things in operating the way they should without problems. My car, when I'm driving to work and I'm doing 55 or 60 miles an hour and all the little bits and pieces are humming and doing exactly what they're doing, is at peace because it's been put together correctly and there's nothing out of whack. And so I say to myself as a peacemaker, because if my specifications help clarify exactly what the owner wants to the contractor so that there's no question and no controversy, I'm actually, in a positive way, making peace. I find that. And of course, we know what Jesus of Nazareth said about blessed are the peacemakers. So I see that as a spiritual component of being a specifier.
Well, I had never thought about it that way. So, new insight. We had Steve Groth ask why, because of the comment you made, Louis, why give preference to a cold caller if they're a CSI member? Shouldn't a CSI member rep know better than to not make cold calls?
Well, yes. On the other hand, many of the CSI members are personal friends, and so one allows them a little more leeway than you would a complete stranger. But the CSI membership is preferable. One, we want to build up our membership, and two, if they have become a member, that shows a certain level of commitment to communications and understanding of the products and understanding the industry that when I speak to a manufacturer's rep who's never even heard of CSI, I get very suspicious about what level of quality of information I'm going to get out of that person. And that happens from time to time.
Well, Louis, we have, I think Eric Lawrence is contributing a nice comment here that fits well under connecting. Whenever possible, the specifier should engage the contractor directly. Specifier typically has a lot of book knowledge, whereas the contractor has more real-world knowledge. Understanding the real-world conditions can help the specifier get it right the first time and help them get what they want out of the contractor.
I'm going to change that from contractor to CM because, of course, the difference is that a CM starts during the design period, and yes, you are absolutely right. I have any number of times specified something and in conversations with the CM change the product, sometimes for a more expensive product, but one that saved time. And it was more important to the CM to save time if, for example, on waterproofing, if he can backfill the excavations faster, he'd rather save that money and use a more expensive waterproofing than one that has to sit there and cure.
Yep. We have another comment, and I hope you can find places for these lists. So this one from Peter Sedgwick. From Peter Sedgwick. In Boston, currently specification firms are writing the whole Bible for architectural firms. Thus, the architects do not even know all the products in a particular specification. Is this a trend you are seeing nationally? So this is not really a role for specifier, perhaps, at least not directly by the question. Peter, I guess I would answer you as a specification consultant. The firms that we're working with, there are some that absolutely will review the specification and be deeply involved. There are many that are not that deeply involved and probably fall in that same group that you're trying to describe. That the product selections can often be hours, and they may be unaware of what those selections are unless they're an aesthetic selection. What are you saying, Lewis?
I basically agree with you. I'm kind of confined to my own single firm, so you're much better qualified to answer that question than I. Okay, do we want to go to another? I'll tell you.
Vivian is getting to. That can be a problem with communication channels. When we can do it, it's nice, but not if it messes up the bidding environment.
I think that had to do with involving the contractor or the CM product decisions. And that's why I went back and clarified during the design process. Obviously, once we get those contract documents out on the street, nobody wants to do change orders. We want to try to avoid them as much as possible, and that's one of the great things about the CM process, is that by coordinating some of those product decisions with the CM up front, him doing the CM doing the value analysis on the fly, we can avoid a lot of change orders.
Okay.
CM being construction, there's a question that construction manager, so let me type that in there.
Okay. And Matt, we have a volunteer, Vivian Bowles, wanting to join the conversation. If you're able to unmute Vivian.
Oh, she's always worth listening to.
Here I am.
Well, thanks, Vivian. Thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. I wanted to address the question of, do your architects know what's in their specs?
Go ahead. What do you think?
I agree with you, with Lewis, that the answer is sometimes. I do have architects and even owners who read and mark up my specs, and it's a wonderful change from the ones that I know have not read them because they call me up and ask me, is such in the spec? So I try to cope with the ones who don't read by walking them through or pointing out to them, making a point of telling them what assumptions I made or what extrapolations I made from our coordination or conversations.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll even highlight a copy of the specs for them and go over it with them on the phone, on a desktop share.
Okay. That's always a good way to collect comments, I found, if they're willing to go through that process and spend the time with you.
It's much faster than letting them read the specs and mark them up on their own, especially if they insist upon marking them up by hand and scanning them, which is painful but doable. I'll take anything I get. But I far prefer a PDF markup.
One of the things that I used to do, Vivian, is when I was a project specifier, was to, I had a style set up with a red box and bold red italic lettering, and I could put a note in there and say, Eric or Bob, choose one of the following two or fill in the blanks. And so that when they got the draft, they didn't necessarily have to read every word, but they could focus in on the important things where they needed to make a decision rather than me.
Hey, Louis, we need your help to go back to the main slide. Just pick number 1.
I saw that, and I'm
okay.
going to take Vivian's comment out of the checking box, and I'm going to move it over to the producing box, because I really think that's part of that process. So let me do that, and then we'll go back and have the overview again.
Okay, Vivian, you mentioned talking about your assumptions to get to the production, actually writing the spec. Are you documenting any of that through a checklist or through some sort of a form to be able to communicate the assumptions before you're even writing?
Sometimes I let my team see my in-house tracker, section tracker, and I'll document my questions on it and then have them send back their answers. That's actually a little bit unusual. I tend to document for myself rather than or to just keep the emails. I'll send them a question and keep the email that has their response.
Okay.
And then I'll input that information in the checklist. I live and die by a section tracker in Excel usually, and so issues that come up with sections, including assumptions and questions, get documented there, but that's generally an in-house document.
We might, David, we might get Vivian to share that. I have a similar work plan document that I've used. It was also Excel, so that you can handle multiple projects and know where the status of every single spec section on 5 or 6 different projects at a time. And that would probably be a good topic for a future discussion, and maybe we could persuade Vivian to be a guest presenter.
Well, we could do that, and we might be able to get others to contribute their own methods.
Yes. So let's think about that for the early new year.
Okay. We did have
on the hook, Vivian.
We did have a comment from Greta Eckhart, and this is under the connecting heading. It says, how about connections, the connection specifiers make between design concepts, performance requirements, products, and the appropriate language?
Oh, I think I want to put that into the producing.
Okay.
Because that's really kind of what we do.
Greta, your idea is captured, but in a different place.
From, let's say, how can I say that?
Okay, while you're working on that one, I want to go to, and did you pan back out so Eric can capture? Okay.
I did, and I will do that again here in a minute.
Okay, and Greta agreed. She was okay with you putting it here. So that good call, Louis. And we mentioned proactive discussions under producing, and since we're here, I guess I would ask, how are those discussions happening? Are these in-person meetings? Are these WebEx or webinar type meetings? Are these email exchanges? Or are you actually using specifications as the communication tool by inserting questions right into the spec? So all of you out there, how are you doing it? Vivian says desktop share via Join Me, but she prefers in person. Thank you, Vivian. Faster, Lewis, faster.
I am a 10-finger typist, but I'm not the fastest person in the house.
Okay, Eric Lawrence added another one. He uses Bluebeam Studio sessions, but he also prefers in person. Alan Itzkowitz says lots of phone calls and face-to-face. And Liz O'Sullivan, thanks for joining us today, Liz. She puts her questions in the review set of the specs. So it sounds like we have quite a collection of different methods.
That sounds a lot like my operating procedures with my little red boxes.
You're doing a great job, Louis. I'm glad you're typing and not me.
Yeah, you know, it's not easy to type with 74 people looking over your shoulder.
We'll tell you if you make a spelling error.
Okay. In case Prezi doesn't.
That's right. And Wayne Yancey adds he likes in-person conference calls. Email, one subject per email, please.
Ooh, that's a lot of emails.
It certainly could be a lot of emails.
I think we all agree that I'm going to add one here myself, that I have stated for many years that one of the unwritten responsibilities in my job description is to act as a decision prod. To tell the design team, now is the time to pick your curtain wall. Now is the time to pick the type of roofing that you want. Don't put it off. I want it now. But we all agree that a key to writing effective specifications and getting them done on time is extracting information from our design team, bless their hearts, and even harder is getting the owner's decisions about the conditions of the contract. That's really like pulling teeth.
Right. Well, I like the way that you summarize it, a decision prod, because that's really the role, I believe. It goes more to the role. The others are methods of actually accomplishing getting those decisions. So, let's see.
I don't think we've had anything on researching. Let's go to the researching.
All right, good idea. Change topics.
Now, we put in, I have to, there we go. I put in both researching and learning. The difference is that, researching is specific, is project specific or product specific, whereas learning is more generalized. So let's talk about the specifier's role in researching.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to wait for our group to get caught up since you changed topics. One thing that I would like to put in here is that even though you're saying researching is project specific, which I would agree, but the research that you're doing, at least on the current project, is actually building the learning that you're carrying forward for all projects.
It does that, yes.
So I think that the role here is really about the specifier gaining knowledge of new things to be able to share with project teams, current project and future. Okay, and Vivian is adding a very interesting comment that if she gets into researching for a project, it ends up becoming a blog post. For most research, I try at least to share with my team. So the sharing aspect, I think, is really important too, because that's how, Vivian, I would tell you that anybody out there that's reading Tech Tips, that actually resulted from 3 architects, 3 separate firms, asking the exact same question in the same week. And that's how that whole idea got started. So it is all about sharing, because I wrote it, after the second question, I wrote it down, and didn't you know it, the third architect called. Okay, we had a comment from Eric Lawrence. In my opinion, specifiers spend a lot of time researching and not enough time learning.
Yes.
So it's not just about finding information on a particular project. It's about understanding the reasons why particular decisions regarding the specification are made. Specifiers would do well to take more holistic view of their specifications.
I'm going to record that by putting a parenthesis up here that kind of explains the issue. That research is usually billable and the general learning is not.
Oh, really? I'm not sure I would agree with you, but
well,
okay.
Because you can account for it to a specific project. So if I spend, 3 hours trying to figure out which air barrier to use on a given project, I can that learning, I can attribute that to the in whole or in part to a specific project that are billable hours. Whereas if I go to the CSI convention or my product show here in Nashville, that's not billable time, that's overhead time.
Okay, I see your point. I'm still not sure I agree.
Well, for you, it's all.
Okay, so Rosa Cheney adds that researching is really confirming code compliance, fire tests, NFPA 285 and such, finding equivalent products for bidding purposes, equivalent products for the architect's basis of design. And Rosa, I would guess because of the comment, I'd ask you, is the equivalent product selection often falling to you? The architect is selecting only basis of design? And when they do they communicate the rationale for making the selection? I'll give her a chance to think about that one and see if she can respond. Okay, Vivian adds that sometimes I have to learn in order to get to a billable level on a new material.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I saw that Eric says that he can sometimes spread some of his not direct project-specific time over some projects, as long as that's okay with your company. That's certainly a good way to keep you in the black instead of otherwise. Well, let's go over to the learning category then, since we've been talking about researching and their related subjects. So over here, learning. And let me get rid of my Greeking, my placeholder here.
Okay, I've got to read this comment from Greta Eckhart.
Okay.
Under the producing heading, and I know you're in a different spot, but this one
Well, that's all right.
is probably worth capturing. Maybe you can copy and paste text rather than retyping. Best way to start the project, in her opinion, meet with the team, prepare a PPD. Thank you, Greta.
Yes, thank
For
you.
schematic
indeed.
design, for obtaining overview from the meeting with the PA or the PM, and following up with team meetings to promote discussion and decision-making for each major group of assemblies. Subsequent full specifications can build on knowledge gained during PPD production, particularly if the team has articulated functions, performance requirements for assemblies. And Greta, I don't know if you realize, but I'm such a strong proponent for PPDs, and I really appreciate the comment. I actually just this morning was reviewing a draft PPD with a client here in New York City for a new project that they're just starting. We're actually at schematic design preparing the PPD. And for anyone out there that's not familiar, PPD is a preliminary project description.
And also, David and I are co-chairing the task team for CSI and CSC that is preparing an update to PPD format. And if anybody has some ideas or suggestions, feel free to send those to us.
Okay, and Alan says the general drawback to Greta's PPD thought is that many of us, meaning us, Alan's independent specifier, many of us specifiers are not involved in the project until DD or sometimes at the beginning of CDs.
Yep, that's true.
It is true. And Alan, I would suggest if you're writing outline specs for DD as AIA contracts require, you might want to consider a PPD. Personally, I think it's a more valuable document. Rosa came back, and in response to all of my questions about the architect's basis of design, she was saying they're saying often we want to use this particular item, but want more than one manufacturer to bid. They don't have as wide a knowledge of the various materials that make a similar product. So from that, Rose, I'm guessing that you are actually trying to help find those alternative or comparable products.
Right, and that's certainly a value-added service that specifiers can provide for our teams, because we all know we get a better price if we can have competitive bidding and sub-bidding.
Okay, now I've diverted you, Louis. You were off onto a different topic here.
Oh, we were back
to producing.
We were on learning for a while. Oh, let's go back to the general. Well, you asked me to go back to the overview. Come on.
Steve Groff wants to take you to education.
I don't know why that's...
If you're willing to go.
There we go. So we have planning, learning, researching, educating, connecting, producing, checking, and motivating. Not necessarily in any kind of chronological sequence or importance sequence.
Okay, so if you're ready to hop over to education.
Okay, educating it is.
All right, so the comment from Steve Groff, coordinate company continuing education, lunch and learns, outside seminars and conferences, conduct in-house sessions. In addition, provide one-on-one mentoring for greener specifiers. And I'm taking you mean younger or less experienced specifiers and not sustainable specifiers. And encourage CSI certification. Can also provide outside educational sessions, such as to consultants on document coordination. Steve, great idea. Are you actually doing that with your own consultants? And would that be engineering consultants primarily? Doing a great job there, Louis. And Mike McVitie says he sees.
And of course, we do need to go back and notice one of our early registrants suggested that just the whole educating, getting people to think that teams are convincing them that specs are as important as drawings, and that has important legal consequences, because although the AIA documents say that drawings and specs are of comparable value or equal priority, in point of fact, I was actually a claims manager for my previous firm for about 10 years. In point of fact, when you start talking with lawyers and judges and juries, they all think the specifications are more important and will tend to put more emphasis on them than on the drawings, partly because they can read specs and they have more problems reading drawings. But that's a fact of life. That is a reality that some project managers in particular tend to overlook when it comes to budgeting time to produce the project manual. David, you still there?
I am. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. So Mike McVitie is suggesting a brand new topic, Louis.
Oh,
imagining.
Okay.
Did you get that?
Okay.
And he's suggesting that perhaps specification modeling should belong there.
Okay, well, let me go back out here to the... Oops. I am in line to get a new
Oh, you did that so well.
well, I'm learning from the master.
Okay, while you're adding that piece in, Sharice Schachter is saying...
Well, now you got to tell me exactly what to put in here. Imagining.
Imagining. And
we'll
he
make that
suggested
bold.
One of the items there is specification modeling.
And what do we mean by that?
Well, we're going to have to ask Mike to join us if he has audio. Mike?
I assume that means with respect to somehow coordinating with BIM?
Well,
What do you think, Mike?
Mike is very interested in BIM, so are you with us, Mike?
I am, if you can hear me.
Go ahead.
Well, as a few people know, on the technical committee, we're working on a white paper that's related to this topic. And the modeling I'm referring to is something that probably can be said to not be able to happen now, but it's an approach to specifications or to specifying that will rely on an integration of specification information into a building information model, so that in effect the elements that are in a model or the objects in a model are associated with their attributes and other specification information, and the specifier will actually work in the model or associated with the model in order to develop that information. Like I said, it's not something that can be done today.
No.
I think you're right.
That's what we're all longing for and looking to. Of course, that's not exactly what our PMs have in mind. Our PMs have in mind that they create this BIM model, and then they push a button somewhere, and out comes 300 pages of entirely correctly coordinated and concise and technically correct specifications, and without human intervention. But
Right.
bless their hearts, as we say here in the South.
Exactly. Well, thanks for that comment, Mike. That's thought-provoking. Okay, Shri Schachter says that she's teaching a whole crew of green engineers about specs over the next couple of weeks. Says you have to be proactive to get the education out to those who need it. Is that self-serving, Sharice? I know that I do that myself in an attempt to eliminate some of the repetitive questions, because the more the folks I'm working with know about the spec process, the fewer of those kinds of questions we get, so we can concentrate on the project needs more efficiently. Peter Sedgwick adds that lunch and learns are a value in generic terms, but does not need help with specific product benefits. Specs should always be of higher value than drawings.
I'm sorry, did you say that again?
He says that specs should always be higher value than drawings.
Well, of course, some government agencies do say that in their general conditions. That if there's a variation between or a variance between the drawings and specs, the specs will always govern. And what I was saying is that in practical terms, that's kind of what happens, even if the contract says something to the contrary.
Right, and I actually had an architect tell me that they will always favor the specifications for resolving conflict. When I pointed out that the AIA documents give no order of precedence, his response was, that's the practicality of getting through construction.
But what's at issue is that there's an assumption that there's a commensurate amount of time, energy involved in producing the specifications as there is with drawings. I mean, nobody thinks it's going to take as long to write such specs as do a set of drawings, but that there is a commensurate effort. And we had Ujjwal speaking for us as a guest speaker a few months ago, and he stated categorically that if your spec production is only a couple of % of what your total production budget is, that is per se negligence.
Oh, that would be true. I mean, really, the perception or the reality actually in the business is, I believe the specs, the fee for specifications is actually very low in comparison to the drawings.
Yeah,
So,
and Karen Wood also points out that that in education projects, the school attorneys always inserts the language that the specs govern in the contract for construction. Of course, a mean-minded person might say that lawyers prefer that because not only can they not read drawings, but it's easier for them to misread specifications. But that would be a mean-minded person.
Okay, I want to back up to some of the comments we haven't got to. Bradford Cove, from north of the 49th, I guess, we get our office to sponsor 2 or 3 people in taking a PCD course given by CSC. So Bradford, thanks for joining us from our northern neighbor, Canada. Appreciate that comment, because I think that will actually go under either the educating or learning to be able to take advantage of some of these certification programs out there. And as a specifier role, often we're called on to teach these classes. So, Louis, I don't know if you captured this one. Mary Noe
No.
Under
I'm behind.
said under education, under educating, someone mentioned educating consultants and other team members.
Oh, that's what I'm working on right now.
Okay.
How's that look?
I think that's good. Did that capture it, Mary? Hope so.
Okay. Let's see. What is that? We haven't done much with the checking.
Okay, so you want to change gears again.
Well, just try to
keep everybody on their toes.
That's right.
Okay, crew. Lewis has changed his mind and wants you to talk about checking.
And again, a couple of the preliminary comments were that the specifier often provides, and we had a whole session on this a few months ago, an outside look at the drawings during their preparation, and is able to give some very helpful feedback to the design team in the form of, you can't do that, that won't work. And then also for coordination reviews to check, especially consultant specifications, and make sure that they don't conflict with Division 1 or the conditions of the contract.
Okay, I had one follow-up from Steve Groff. I thought we could chat about just a bit. This has to do with the educating topic that we were on before, but I think it's important.
That's all right.
He says he's tried to conduct sessions with his consultants, but have not been able to pull that together. And Steve, I'd like to suggest one thing that I have had really good success with is trying to present the CDT course, but in a compressed form. CSI organizes it into, I think, 10 different sessions, and I present it in 5, but I take the course to the firm that I'd like to educate. And I actually got some pretty good response. So in one case, I had 40 people from the firm sign up. In the other case, a firm here in New York City, I actually had 91 people sign up for the course, and which was about a third of their staff.
Oh yes,
so
I had
if you
Tommy
take it to them.
Tommy Smith and I presented some similar stuff to the architectural and facilities planning group for Federal Express back when I was working in Memphis, and it was like a day and a half or 2-day session for a large number of people, and and my firm actually got a very nice contract out of them to help them rewrite their master specifications and redo their master drawings for lease build-to-suit projects. So yes, that's, not only is that a good thing to do just in terms of improving the industry, but it can have practical benefits.
Okay, Lois, we have to go back over to checking. We're coming up on the hour, and we have, now that you primed that pump, we have a couple of comments to take care of.
Oh, good.
Okay, so we have, let's see, Alan Etzkowitz says, I always act as a QC reviewer while working on the specifications and comment on coordination, errors, and continually tell my clients that they don't have to put C-specs on the drawings. Okay, so I really believe the specifier is probably the first QC review, because we have to do it just to do our job.
Yes, and especially for the smaller firms that may not have the ability to set aside a senior professional to have a formal pencils down review.
Right. Mary Noe comments that checking of specs by responsible architects and engineers and by a QC reviewer is not involved in the project. And I would suggest that that is the specifier role, because they're not necessarily involved in creating the drawings. So they're able to look at the drawings and see what is there, while the design team often looks at the same drawing and sees what is supposed to be there. And there's a huge difference.
Yes, but also one of the things that about checking is that there are certain things that don't show up on the drawings. I was checking a large project one time and found that the specifier, who was an outside specifications consultant, had, between specifying the air barrier and bat insulation with facing, had wound up with 2 vapor barriers in the wall. And you would never find that by just looking at the drawings. You have to check them together.
Okay. Marilyn Smith would like you to add constructability reviews under checking,
Okay.
which is entirely different than looking for conflicts. And pardon me if I get the pronunciation wrong, but Tiger Murphy was commenting that one big problem in checking is reviewing the notes on drawings, especially the general notes. Often these repeat or conflict with Division 1 information. Frequently these have to be on the drawings, since so often iterations of the design go out without specs. Really? You issue drawings without specs? A blow to the heart. How do you effectively handle the general notes which need to be addressed?
That's an acute problem with our structural engineering friends, because they and the planning examiners like to have a lot of the specification information on the drawings in general notes. Then when they go to edit the written specifications for the project manual, they duplicate the same areas of information and sometimes wind up with conflicting requirements.
And I will tell you, as a specifier, I always read those general notes, because many times the notes as written absolutely do not even apply to the project. And I do make comments on them.
Yes.
And hopefully embarrass them enough that they take the note off.
Definitely so.
Okay, we are at the hour, and we still have people contributing ideas. I am perfectly willing to stay on if Lewis is as well. One thing that I did want to ask before we sign off, and Lewis, I don't know if you want to jump back out to the main screen.
Sure.
Where we had the specifier as the center of the universe. One question that I wanted to ask, and if you want to contribute it would be great, is specifier the right term? Is that really our role? Is there some better term to describe what it is that we do? I don't have a good answer. I'm looking for a term because I think in today's world, specifier does not adequately explain the service, the value that we bring to a particular project. Okay. So I've got to go back here and try to catch up some. These comments are flying in here, Lewis. I don't know if you are seeing this.
I try to keep one eye on that and one eye on the diagram.
Okay, I'm going to back up to Vivian Bowles, who's made several comments. She's saying that she makes her comment, make sure my comments, can I start that over? I make sure any comments I make are regarding coordination, that I say I haven't performed a full review. And she's saying, like Marilyn Smith was commenting, the constructability review. Alan Itzkowitz is saying the most conflicts I've seen between general notes and the specs are on the structural drawings.
Well, in my experience, Alan, the HVAC engineers are the worst ones about trying to rewrite Division 1 and the conditions of the contract. The structural guys will have conflicts between their technical requirements, but they don't try to rewrite other portions of the project manual. But to a less extent, the plumbing folks and the electrical engineers do that, and also non-registered consultants like the food equipment consultants and elevator consultants and people like that, because many of them are used to writing specifications where they're the only work on the project, and so they have a lot of stuff in there that you would want for a standalone project that are not appropriate for being part of an integrated overall general construction contract.
Okay. We have a comment from Bradford Cove that might lead us to another future topic, Louis. He says,
okay.
I found that reviewing the Navisworks model is a great way to find things that don't show up in a 2D set of drawings.
Interesting. I haven't tried that yet. I'll have to, I'm not sure I have the right software on my machine. I'll have to look it up and find out.
And we had one typo that Ron Lincoln would like you to fix. I don't know where he put it. He wants a lowercase g for God, wherever you inserted that.
I don't think I have. I don't think I
okay.
mentioned the...
No, David, that was his
Father
recommendation for a new name for specifier.
I completely missed that one. Thank you, Ron. That's interesting. Okay, Vivian.
One of my favorite science fiction authors, Jack Vance, wrote a series of short stories about a man whose self-styled job description was Galactic Effectuator. And I like effectuator.
Okay, Louis, you've got to capture these notes for specifier terms.
Okay.
Okay. So Vivian Bowles is saying she's not quite sure we're ready for building information manager. But that's one of the terms that's been bannered about recently. Bradford Cove, this is an interesting one, wants Specinator.
Yeah, I saw that.
Eric Lawrence suggests that the specifier is the real value engineer. Peter Sedgwick suggests project knowledge manager and specifier. Mike McVitie added knowledge manager, and I guess you're trying to give Robert Wygant credit for that, Mike? Because I think that is a term that Bob had been championing. Mary Noe suggests the challenge in changing specifier is that we would probably have a half a dozen other titles with little consensus. Probably instead better define specifier.
And I'm inclined to agree. And Ms. Noe, did you used to live in North College Hill? You have an unusual last name, and when I was a teenager in North College Hill, Ohio, our next door neighbor's last name was Noe, which is the French form for Noah.
Let's see, and George Everding. Oh, we haven't heard from George just except for...
Well, I'm going to type in Sheldon's whether you read it or not.
I haven't got there. What did he...
Oh, okay.
Okay. George Everding says the specifier is often the firm's institutional memory for how to do things correctly, since he or she sees every one of the firm's projects.
But you have people occasionally referring to me as the guru.
Okay, Alan Itzkowitz suggests, he says, I would say scapegoat in lieu of God. Okay, and I don't know if we can bounce back. We're going to collect all these comments, and I think Lewis might have to get some of these added in after the fact. Vivian Bowles says, no one knows what a specifier is anyway, so it means whatever we tell people it means. Okay, and I see Sheldon's comment. Thank you for getting that one. Tiger Murphy adds, Speaker of the House of Quality.
Creative.
A little lengthy, perhaps. Elias Salt's expert at all things.
Universal expert. I'm going to put that down. You know, it's like what was that old stand-up comedian from the 50s and 60s, Professor Irwin Corey, who billed himself as the world's foremost expert?
Yes, I remember that.
Without any specificity.
Sheldon says we're starting to sound like architects. That could be dangerous.
Yes, we're all conceited, and they are.
Bradford Cove suggests non-graphic information specialist. And I'll add one from the LA chapter CSI meeting where I attended, and I don't know who made the comment, but it did come from our Disney Imagineering folks. He suggested technical designer. Think about that one.
Well, I'm going to put mine in then. We're the people that somebody else has a design, and we're the people that tell them how to do it.
Actually, I like that. Okay.
Well, it's 3:11, and I think we do need to sign off. But keep those cards and letters coming in, folks.
Oh, this was great fun, and Lewis, I applaud you for keeping up. And we will make this available. Actually, the Prezi is publicly available now. You can actually just search on Prezi.com, and you'll be able to find it. It's there for anybody who wants to access it. I will download a PDF version and send that off to Matt. So anyone that wants the PDF of this, let Matt know. He'll keep a list and we'll get that sent out.
And as I stated earlier, we got away from some of the, mundane things like arrange for printing and distribution and arranging for professional seals for the stacks and some of that mundane stuff, which is fine. But I will also provide this little internal role description to Matt for distribution if anybody would care to see that.
Okay, and next month, the first Thursday happens to land on the 1st.
So we won't be meeting that day.
We'll try for the following week, the 8th. So we hope to see you all back here then. And Matt, perhaps we can get just an alert out on that as well, that we're changing the date so that nobody tries to sign in and miss football.
So the big question is, David, what are you going to talk on the 8th?
I'm going to have to ask you to tell me what that will be.
We'll get it figured out. We'll get it figured out, folks.
All right. Thanks very much for joining us.